A Tiny Revolution features adults having adult conversations, which means that adult language is probably going to be present, just so you know. Hey friends, I wanted to get your attention just for a second before we jump into the episode today. I wanted to tell you about an email I got from a listener the other day. He told me that he was at the end of his rope, that his parents didn't understand him, that his pastor told him that he needed to get an exorcism to get rid of the demon of homosexuality. He told me that he was thinking about killing himself. And then he found my blog where I talked about my own experience with suicidal ideation and my attempts as well. And he said because of that blog that he was still here. I got a DM from a girl the other day on Instagram who is trying to figure out how she can be both bisexual and Christian. And she felt like God didn't love her. And I, pointed her to some videos that we had talked about the same thing. And now she said that she's really grateful and that she's so happy that there's other queer Christians out there. She had no idea. That's the world we live in, friends. There's so many people out there who are still in need of connection and community, people who are in need of a good word for their lives, that there is hope. That's what this podcast is doing. That's what the blog is doing. That's what the YouTube videos are doing. And I don't say that to toot my own horn. I say that because I've got the receipts for it. I say that because I can tangibly see what this work is doing, and that's why I'm here with you today. When I started this work over 3 years ago, I had no idea how incredible it was going to be. I had no idea the reach that we would have just from a little tiny blog all the way to, QCF and more, and it's amazing. It's amazing to see people finally getting to see what it looks like to live an abundant life, to get like a taste of what it could be like outside of the small world we were born into. People are getting free, and that, my friends, is because of you. If you're new to the podcast or any of my work, you probably know that I'm an independent creative, which means I don't make that sponsor money. And I get 100% of my support from folks like you. Folks who think, wow, this podcast is so great. Folks who share the work and who believe in telling better and more stories about faith and sexuality, gender, and justice. And we also know that telling stories like this is probably one of the most effective things we can do in changing the hearts and minds of people out there, and also in finding solidarity and solace for ourselves. You also might know I started grad school this semester, and I had to step away from my job at the yoga studio I was working at because I was hoping that I could make it just with content creation and school and just being frugal. But the reality is that presently, the way I'm working is not sustainable. Not in the way I want to work, not with the amount of content that I want to make going forward. I've got big dreams for 2019. I've got 2 podcasts, one that is going to start in December called Decent Advice, where there's going to be an extended version for Patreon supporters and a kind of a solo version for everybody else. I want to release multiple videos a week, not just encouraging videos or stuff about being gay and Christian, but I actually want to do educational series on how to talk about the Bible, how we should view the Bible, how do we talk about sexuality, how do we talk about sex in general. There's so many things that our community of queer Christians needs right now, and there's so much that I want to produce, but I cannot do it without you because, honey, this shit ain't free, to be honest. I've got so many different things that I'm paying for, not to mention my own bills, my living expenses, and the cost of hosting. You know the deal. This work happens because you make it happen. So I'm inviting you today to become a Patreon supporter with this really long, big ask. The current goal, I would like to be at $2,500 a month, which could cover the cost of hosting. It could cover advertising fees for other projects, paying my editors, and a lot more beyond that. And if we can get beyond $2,500 a month, I want to also get transcripts available for every single podcast. And also accurate closed captions for all of my videos so that our hearing impaired friends can join in on this, because accessibility matters, you guys. But it does cost about $1 a minute to transcribe stuff, and you do the math. It's a lot. So this is where you come in. You're going to go right now to patreon.com/thekevingarcia and become a sustaining partner. It takes just a minute. There are some incredible rewards, like a Slack channel to get you connected with other folks like you, monthly meditations to help center yourself, a dope-ass newsletter, a bunch of helpful stuff, original music sometimes, t-shirts, coaching calls. You will get something out of investing in this work. Besides just the satisfaction that Your money is reaching out to kids in rural places who don't have any other connection to the LGBTQ community. Your money is helping connect people who are stuck in the closet in megachurches. Your money is going to help people get free. And I truly believe that. So, are you in? Even if you just have $1 a month, $1 can help change the life of a small queer little baby in the middle of nowhere, Alabama. You can help save lives. That's what this is. Honestly, that's why I'm so passionate about this work. It's not because I want to be a famous YouTuber. It's because we're literally saving lives, my friends. We're literally standing in the gap for people who haven't got out of the closet and who haven't walked into their freedom yet. So, if you're somebody who has the means to do it, please become a sustaining partner. Let's make this work together. And once again, that website is patreon.com/thekevingarcia. The show notes have the link. Thank you. Thank you so much for your support thus far. And I'm so very excited to see what we can do going forward. Now that I've talked your ear off, let's jump into the show. Hey there, you're listening to A Tiny Revolution, a podcast about ordinary people living revolutionary lives. I am Kevin Garcia. Welcome to another episode, homie. How you doing? How you been? It was Thanksgiving last week, so obviously I wasn't on because Thanksgiving and tryptophan and turkey and family and all that stuff. And, casually telling your family that colonization was a thing that happened. I don't know if you can relate to that, but in the comments, let me know. How was your holiday season? How's it kicking off for you? Is it fun? Is it lonely? For a lot of us, this time of year can be super duper lonely. So I totally get that. So if you are that person out there, know that your queer fam loves you. We out here in these streets, and pretty soon we're going to abolish the system anyways and establish our own damn holidays. But until that day, we got your back. A couple of announcements before we jump into the conversation today. One, if you are going to the QCF or Q Christian Fellowship Conference coming to Chicago in January, I am going to be there. Matthias Roberts is going to be there. So many amazing humans. Jennifer Knapp, who was the guest last week, is speaking. She's a keynote for the 2019 conference. And I'm going to be there. I'm going to be doing a workshop on forming sexual ethics. It's called Let's Talk About Sexual Ethics. Just go look at it. It's a really clever way that I set that up because I'm just such a clever and original individual. LOLOL. I'm also going to be leading worship alongside Tash Holmes and the amazing worship crew. I'm really excited to be working with them again for the third year in a row. And then additionally, I'm going to be doing a live show for the first time ever. A Tiny Revolution Live is happening at QCF. I have no idea what we're going to do. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm still figuring out how we're going to do recording and stuff like that, but I absolutely believe that it's going to be the greatest time ever. So please be sure to join us in Chicago for the Q Christian Fellowship Conference. You can get all your info at qchristian.org. All right, jumping into the conversation this week. This is a conversation with my friend Caleb Wilde. Caleb and I met over the summer at the Wild Goose Festival, and I was fascinated by his work and what he did. I had already heard of him before, and I think I actually heard him on the Rob Bell podcast a long time ago. And our conversation was just so good for me. We talk about sex, we talk about death, we talk about Eucharist and baptism and the movie Coco. It's so much. But let me tell you a little bit about him and his book, which is called Confessions of a Funeral Director: How the Business of Death Saved My Life. I think this is the book description. The meta-narrative that we've been given is that death is entirely negative. We use war metaphors to describe our personal battles with terminal sickness as though we believe death is an enemy that needs to be fought. With the death as negative story, it's made us easier for us to abdicate our responsibilities to the dead and dying over to the death and dying professionals who have been trained to care for, beautify, and hide the horrors of death. But there's another narrative about death, that death maybe can be beautiful. Death can allow us to see our own mortality, realize our finitude, and perhaps even cultivate a meaningful life. For the dying, death can be a release of a slowly deteriorating body. Times of death can allow us to hug our loved ones, allow us to cry with our family and friends, and honor a life well lived. Embracing death can allow us to embrace life, and contemplating our mortality can allow us to pursue vitality. And maybe when we embrace death, we can actually take back death care. Yes, death can be bad. Yes, death can be negative, but it can also be beautiful. And that alternative needs to be discussed, which is what we come to today with my discussion with Caleb Wilde. We talk about all of that and so much more. A little bit about his background education and all those, the credential stuff. He's a graduate of Northampton Community College in the funeral service program, a licensed funeral director with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania since 2007, a bachelor's degree in Bible from Lancaster Bible College, master's degree in theology from Biblical Seminary, certificate of thanatology. I don't know what thanatology is. Is that the study of Thanos? Let me know when you listen to this, Caleb. From the Association for Death Education and Counseling. Currently a postgrad student at the University of Winchester, completing the Death, Religion, and Culture program, which is just so cool. I think you guys are really going to get... I think you're going to love this conversation. It was really meaningful for me. So Caleb, thanks for being on the show. And the rest of you, sit down, shut up, grab yourself a beverage of your choice. I'm currently drinking hot cocoa with like a little bit of rum in it because 'tis the season, you know what I'm saying? Anyways, here's my conversation with my friend Caleb Wilde. If someone didn't know who you were, say like you're at a cocktail party and says, "Hey, what do you do? What's your thing?" What would you pitch them? Like, what's your cocktail party talk?
It depends if I like them, because inevitably I know where it's going to go. It's going to go to, well, what's the grossest thing you've ever seen, and do you really do the embalming and stuff, and do people really move after they die? So if I don't like them, I'll just be like, I'm a travel agent or some shitty makeup thing like that.
Just you're helping ferry souls to the other side, that kind of travel agent.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's the direction I'll go one way, or I'll go into the stories and try to figure out how much I can say without grossing them out. So it's kind of me reading their nonverbal cues, trying to understand if I can talk about death boners and if I can talk about times where I've seen cats eat people.
What?
And things of that nature. Yeah, it's true. It happens.
Yeah.
So once I get that feel, then we go from there.
That is quite a pitch. And also like two different pitches. So like, I'm sure that you've answered this question a zillion times. How the hell did you get into this line of work?
I ask that every day. Like I ask myself, why do I stay? I was born into it. So I am a sixth generation funeral director.
No way.
On both the maternal and the paternal side, I have history. So my father's side, I'm sixth generation. On my mother's side, her family owned a funeral home. I would be fifth generation. So I'm a thoroughbred.
Wow.
And I did not want to do it. In fact, I wanted to be a missionary in high school.
Same.
Because the Holy Spirit and the pressure from the leaders in my life, that was the only way I could please God.
Yeah.
And I definitely couldn't please God at the funeral home.
No. Because who wants to talk about death when there's life everlasting, honey?
Yeah, well, I don't know that I believe in that.
Girl, neither do I. So, but...
Well, yeah.
That's another discussion for another time, probably.
That's a big rabbit trail. I'm in it, and I'm not sure how long I'll stay. I did go to seminary. I graduated from seminary. I have a post-grad degree in death, religion, and culture.
Whoa. I didn't know that was like a degree you could get.
It's not in the US of A. It's over in England. England is cool with death.
Work.
There's grad, post-grad, doctorate programs on death. So
death.
England might be in my future. Just because
like possibly going
working
to teach
around,
over there, or
no, going to learn, going to maybe do a PhD program at one of the universities that offers something death focused.
So I know that you've said in other places that you want, I mean, you just said like England's okay talking about death. nowhere in the United States are we talking about death. So like my father died back in February, and I feel pretty comfortable talking about it myself because I think that the way that, I don't know, just the way my brain works, I'm okay with talking about it. But why is it such a problem here in the U.S.?
It's a problem for multiple reasons, and Christianity is certainly a big part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Christianity has done a couple things. Heaven has made grief less weighty, or so we think. We can just work around grief because Jesus and heaven and everything that comes with it.
Mm-hmm.
So why should we grieve if our loved one's in a better place? Original sin is problematic.
Mm.
We believe that death is inherently punishment.
Mm-hmm.
So if death is punishment, it's not a good thing. It's something that we can't embrace.
Mm.
And America as a whole, we have so many immortality projects where we are trying to do everything to make ourselves feel like a part of us will live forever. That the idea that whatever we do and what we are doing will one day just end and won't be, is existentially difficult for us to grasp. So there's a number of, it's kind of like a cesspool for why death is such a hard conversation. Mm-hmm. And the other thing, and this is, I might be getting off track here, but
no, chase your glory.
We have put death into binary categories. And this was something that, you guys were talking about back when we met at the Wild Goose. And can I just go back there? So the first time we met, I remember exactly what happened. You asked me, how do you like my pants? Because it was...
Did I say that?
Yeah, that was the first thing you said. And it was like 90 degrees and everybody was sweaty and dirty. Like nobody at Wild Goose believes in hell, but we were literally in hell at Wild Goose. And my first thought was that this is a committed person who
I think what the fuck was I wearing?
It was tight. The pants were tight. The top was froofy, but it worked.
I bet I was wearing like my acid wash jorts. Hold on, I can't even tell because I'm looking at a picture on my wall right now of that day, and I can only see the top. But yeah, the top I looked like a total flamer, but the pants apparently were apparently tight.
I'm the same way though. Like fall starts for me right now. I'm breaking out the pants. I never wear shorts. The only time I've worn shorts this entire summer was at Wild Goose. Because I would rather look nice in pants than show my white ass legs to the world. So
yeah, it's a hard life.
Yes.
But yeah, so
it was a
that's what I meant. So I asked you, do you like my pants? I must have been real fucked up.
We all were, I think, to some degree or another.
Yeah. Anyways,
so binaries and death. So we've put death in either or categories where you are either dead or you're alive. And one thing that I'm interested in is looking, and it's something that I might pursue if I go the PhD direction, is the liminality of death or the queerness of death, where there's a lot of ambiguity to things that we want to make either or. So we want to make it that when our loved one dies, that we're seeking for closure and we're ending that chapter. But I don't think that we can look at it in such an either or way. It's a threshold experience where when we experience death, our loved ones are both still alive. They're both still a part of us. They still speak to us, even though we ignore it. At times we can still hear their voices. Yeah. In not like a super spiritual way, like in a legit real way, but they aren't here at the same time and they aren't speaking at the same time. So it's these this confluence, this ambiguity that exists, and instead of sitting in the tension of it, we seek for closure, and we just want to package it up and put it behind us, all neat and tidy, and with a ribbon and a frilly card. So that's something that is also a problem, I believe, because that's what we do in America, and it's served us well, is that we place things in categories, and that we have a really difficult time with things that are ambiguous, or things that are liminal, or things that are queer. And that is also one of the main reasons why I think it's hard for us to talk about death, because it's inherently liminal. It's in a space that is both and. It's in a space where these tensions exist, where somebody's not dead or alive, they're dead and alive, where it's not grief or celebration, it's grief and celebration, where they no longer speak, but they still speak. And they are not present, but they still are in us. So that
almost inescapably so.
Yeah. So I think that I have a lot to learn from queer theory, just because there's a lot that can be applied to the way that we handle our relationship with mortality and our relationship with our dead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The thing that you were saying, like all of that is our loved ones who have died, who are speaking but not speaking, here but not here. Like that makes total sense to me. If I may, like dive into a little bit of like narrative of my own,
please,
if that's okay.
These are the conversations I love.
So like my dad and I didn't speak for 3 years, and the day I was supposed to fly up to, me too, honestly. But the day I was supposed to fly up to see my father was the same day that he died. Oh. And so like that was going to be the time when I was going to sit with him and like hopefully in my mind's eye have like a reconciling moment, like finally, say whatever we were going to say, because this was going to be my last chance. And about a couple hours before my flight, my brother called me and told me that he died. And even after that, like, even after going to the funeral, even after like, his body was like, I don't know where his body is. He's supposed to be buried in Arlington at some point in the future, but there's like a list a mile long to get into Arlington.
No joke. So he's legit. I mean, you have to be a real somebody to get in there. Yeah.
It's so annoying. Apparently, so we had a funeral, and then we have to have a second funeral. I don't have time for this. Just kidding. That's really harsh. But it's been really weird, like learning to like, how do you give forgiveness, or how do you forgive somebody when their body isn't like, when nothing's inhabiting their body? Yeah. How do you find reconciliation with somebody who you can't physically converse with? And those are the questions I've been dealing with, because it's real. Like part of my healing is going to come from coming to terms with like what my relationship with my father was and still is in some ways. Like, friend of mine told me, she said like, you should put a picture of your father on your prayer altar. So that way, like, you can just have him on your mind rather than him coming to mind and just being wrecked every single time.
Yeah. So
it's been a really interesting experience this past year of trying to build, this sounds so weird maybe, but like trying to build a relationship with somebody who is not physically here anymore. But like I'll be in yoga and I will hear him talking to me, and I am just wrecked. Or like I will see something and I'm just reminded of us and just like my childhood with him, and I'm just not overcome completely, but it's just like, it gives me pause. I'm just like, why is he still here? Yeah. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? Just like, you weren't here 3 years before. Like, why are you bothering me now. But not that he's bothering me, but just he's here, and it's weird. But it feels a lot easier than just putting him in the ground and letting that be that.
And that's what I think a lot of us do. I mean, the very idea of closure, where the hell does that come from? Why do we think that a healthy grief experience ends with closure? Or that we have 5 stages of grief, and once we get to the last one, we
should be done.
Yeah.
We've grieved.
Right. And even our conception of grief is very binary. Like, why does death always have to be grief? It doesn't. Grief in some ways can be a celebration of embracing the goodness and living in that goodness and remembering, and not just remembering, but imbibing the person who was.
Right.
So I think the way that I've come to look at it is it's a continuing bond. Relationships don't end at death. And exactly your experience, where it's both, though. It's both he's dead and he is still alive. He's not talking. You can't call him on the phone or text him, but he's still speaking. And so instead of being like, well, that's too weird, it doesn't fit into my categories, just walking into it and being okay with it, which is hard.
Yeah. Did you by chance see the film Coco?
I love that film. Favorite film.
Oh, listen, that last scene, tears.
Did you cry?
Tears.
I cried.
Oh my God. Well, also my grandmother has late stage dementia.
Oh my goodness.
And so whenever I sing for her and sing jazz music, she just gets, everything comes back to her so quickly. So it was such I'm like, oh my God, I've been there. But that entire film, being about death and remembering our loved ones, and how your ancestors can be celebrated.
Yeah.
It was just an interesting, it was really healing for me to watch that, to see how this other culture totally doesn't exclude the members of their family who have passed on or are dead. They're just this is these are still people who are still here and still with us, and we want to keep them as part of our traditions. And I wonder how much as Americans and just Western people in general, we have to learn from cultures like that who have their ancestors and people who come before them as a part of their spiritual practice.
Yeah. And also, so I brought my son to see Coco. He's 6. I thought, oh, this is going to be a good bonding experience. He's going to love it. It's a cartoon.
It's floofy.
Yeah. And at the end, I was crying too. And I look over at him and I'm like, so how'd you like it? He's like, it was dumb. And I just wanted to, I was like, well, who the fuck are you? So we did not connect. It's still something between us that we will have to work through.
A point of contention.
Yes. Yeah.
There's some reconciliation, some healing to
happen.
There
does need to be. I'm still upset at him. He's a little dick. So yeah.
I want to get to a point where if I have children one day where I can call them I'm just oh, my kid's such an asshole. I want to get to that level.
Yeah, he can be, but so can I. And so
so can we all. At least we're self-aware though. That's the main thing.
Yes. Yeah. So Dia de los Muertos. And of course, I am not Mexican, so I don't want to, or really, I guess it originates even before that, before
colonization.
Thank you.
I got you.
So I don't want to speak to it like an expert because I'm not, but from what I've learned is that the idea of celebrating the person who has died is a way to hold back the second death. So, who is it? That white rapper from Seattle. Oh God, you're going to need to Macklemore, help me again. Yes. Thank you. There's some song that he talks about how we die once and then we die a second time when people forget our name. It's cheesy, but there's a lot of truth to that, especially that's brought out by Dia de los Muertos, where they're celebrating the defeat of the second death by remembering their loved one. So death beat them once, but death will not beat them again, because they are going to keep speaking the name of their deceased. And they're going to keep bringing them up, and they're going to involve them in their houses. They're going to put their pictures on the walls. They're going to remember the stories. They're going to feast in celebration because we are remembering and we are defeating the second death. So that needs to be in me, that tradition. Yes. And exactly like you said. And that's not the only one. I mean, it's all over the world, it seems, in different pockets where we are celebrating the defeat of the second death by including our dead in everything that we do, instead of excluding them. Once they're buried or cremated, they're in the dead space, and the living space is just inhabited by us.
I mean, the thing I think you just described was the Eucharist. Like, I don't know if you, because I'm such a good Christian, I just heard it that way, but that, I think that in some ways, that's what, we are doing. It says, whenever we eat this bread and drink this cup, we proclaim our Lord's death until he comes. And to say, and that's what Jesus is doing. Jesus is, by doing this, by remembering, the person of Jesus, by remembering that, we look at our lives totally differently because we see that Jesus defeated the second death, if you will, and by doing that, by keeping this tradition alive, by keeping this memory alive, we're able to not just defeat the second death around the memory of Jesus Christ, but we are able to defeat death in every other form because we're compelled towards justice, because we remember the life and we incorporate this person into our being. Damn!
When does the amen drop? Now? Amen? Or later?
Listen, I'm about an air horn, so sorry, this was light bulb moment for me.
Yeah,
wow.
So, and I think that's the vein where we can start talking about eternal life, right? That's the vein where life continues on, in my understanding of things. It might be real, it might be, and I'm not going to say it isn't. It might not be, and I'm okay either way, but I'm going to actively remember the dead in my life. I'm going to keep them alive. We are going to keep them alive by not excluding them from our day-to-day, but including them in our day-to-day. However that might look, like a shrine, like was in Coco, that beautiful shrine, or instead of leaning away from the voices that we hear and think that we're crazy, leaning into it. So I do. I think that there's a lot of power to the Eucharist in this conversation. And probably the irony of it is that that's a foundational aspect of the Christian faith, and yet Christians work so damn hard to separate the dead from the living. And
when in general, just I think what I really enjoyed about what you initially said is just talking about death. It's just as a natural progression of life, not as this thing that is a punishment. And I remember when I was younger, when I was full blown charismatic.
Oh, you too? Did we do the tongues?
Oh, did I do the tongues, honey? Oh shit! No. I was all about it, and there's still moments like I've noticed.
I had a month. I had a month of tongues, and then I
Just a month.
stopped.
Only you just
Just a
dabbled a
month.
little bit, and you're like, I don't want that.
I tried it. Yeah, I couldn't. I mean, I have trouble speaking to begin with, yet alone speaking.
Listen, I'm not good with English as it is. I don't want to try and take on a second language.
That's right. That's right.
My God.
I'm American. I don't need a second
Listen,
language.
come on. And the Bible was written in English too, so like it's fine.
Praise the
Hallelujah. But back in my charismatic days, like I would often say to people, especially people who are experiencing death, I'm just like and I regret this now, but like I would, the way I rationalize it in my head, I'm just like, the reason death is so hard for us is because it was never a part of the original design of the world. And I'm like,
Right.
I don't know if that's like an actual good reading of the Genesis myth. And also I was like a biblical literalist at the time. So like that didn't help either, but like looking at it in hindsight from the other side of that, of, I don't know, my natural progression of being human, I think it makes a lot more sense now that that death is just a part of this thing. And I don't want to see it as just like, yeah, it hurts, and yeah, like we feel shattered at the end of it or during it. But I think like, I don't know. I think how I've at least been processing it is that it doesn't have to. I know for me, everyone's just like, how do you get over grief? How do you get through grief? I'm just like, I don't know if you do. I just think it's just like you learn to live with it in different ways. It's almost like a mountain, or at least like you're like walking around a mountain, and you just like, once you come around to the same point on the mountain, it's like you just see it from a different angle.
That's good.
At least for me, like grief for me is disgusting and horrible, and it makes me cry during yoga, but I feel something. And I think a lot of times we spend our time trying to shut that part of ourselves down, when the only way to continue to live is to feel. And if we're just not wanting to feel this one emotion, there's these very complex emotions around the loss of our loved ones, like we're never gonna continue to be human. It's almost just like we die rather than, our loved one.
Yeah, we do. A part of us dies. I think we're liminal in that way too, where when somebody that we love dies, we also die. And I don't know if it's true. It's one of the things that I've read in my studies that it was like, oh, that's cool, and it must be true because it's in a book. But so supposedly in some Jewish sects, and of course, it's probably just like Christianity where there's 100 billion variations. But supposedly when somebody dies, you're not obligated to the law. So if, my wife died or my son died, or when your dad died, you're not obligated to the law for a month, because the law is only for the living. And the idea being that when they die, you die too. So I think that we are not only whispering our dead back to life, but we're whispering ourselves too, where we're, by allowing them to come back to life in our lives, it revives us, because parts of us die with them when they die, because we're not just dead or alive. We exist in an ambiguous space.
And I think, to go back to another Christian metaphor, sorry, I want to say like, I don't mean to do that.
We can't escape it.
I mean, I am starting seminary, so like I might as well just lean into this whole shit,
Yeah.
But like, like if baptism is supposed to be symbolic of that, of entering into death, like it's already there. Like we signed up for it when we, at least like in the Baptist tradition, we do a full immersion. you know, as as of a symbol of like, you know, of dying and then being raised to life in something new. And so,
You guys like things wet.
So it's true. I love a good double entendre. This is also why I want to go into sex pot, like getting people to talk about sex more, because I think that's funny as shit.
Yeah. And that's another part. I mean, that's another part of who we are that for some reason or another we've associated with badness. Death and sex are very similar.
Say more.
Where they are the two things that definitively make us human.
Yes.
And in the past, that's been interpreted as not divine.
Ooh.
So if these two things are the essence of our humanity and aren't transcendent, they're the things that we shame. They're the things that we talk about with euphemisms. They're the things that we dance around and don't touch. It's because they're both base. They are earth. They are the dust. My desires, my who I am.
My body.
Sexually. Yeah, my body. And my body that will die. There's a lot of connection between sex and death. And I think when we transition to sex positivity or death positivity, it also helps us with the other.
Right.
So as we're learning to accept these parts of ourselves, these fundamentally human parts of ourselves, it helps us to also accept the other fundamentally human part.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah.
No, I 100% relate. I think, because I think, and maybe it's easier to approach sex from the threshold of death, perhaps, because one of them we have a choice of whether or not to engage with it, and the other one is going to hit us in the face. So it's like death is going to happen. Like you do not have control over that. But like choosing to engage with like sex and desire, that's something that's a little bit more in our control. And I know for me, after my father died, I got really clear on a bunch of stuff that I wanted. And maybe it has to do with like, I recognized that, you know, I came face to face with my own mortality in a way. I'm like, saw it and I was like, okay, like, well, what do I really want? You know, what do I really desire? And like, and what can I do with this body when it's still working? You know?
Yeah.
So I think there's, because I now that I have been able to talk about death more and grief more and like this hard things, I've just personally found it a lot easier to say like, you know what, like my time is limited on this planet, on this plane at least, and I want to try and get as much out of it as I can, and that includes figuring out what the hell I want figuring out what the hell I want in the bedroom, or figuring how like how I want to structure my relationships, or how I want to love people. And a lot of times like we spend so much time, like you said, talking about sex and euphemism. And I think that also like within Christian subculture, we're so bad about talking about sex. And like, I know that like in my last relationship, I was bad about talking about sex or what I wanted, because I think I know that I still had shame around it. And there's still some shame issues that I'm working through around desire and my body. And it was just, it's very interesting how, at least now I feel, because of my experience around my father's death, that just like, I know I have a boldness of actually saying what I want and saying what I need and saying what I feel a lot more than I did before.
Fun fact.
I love facts.
Tangent. La Petite Mort is a French term.
Yes, Le Petit Dumont.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Le Petit Dumont.
Yeah, so it's literally the little death.
The little
death, and it describes orgasm. So there's a nice little, intersection there, where I guess orgasm is supposedly a brief loss of I don't know what it is.
I don't know either. It's awesome though. I think it's dope.
Yeah, it feels good. It's good.
I wonder why. I wonder if the French. Now I need to go look this up to see if like the French talked about like death and sex a lot together, because that could be an interesting.
Can you say it again?
Can you say it again? Le Petit Dumont.
Thanks. That sounds so much sexier than the way that I say it.
Le Petit Dumort.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's those silent T's on the end of it is like really confusing.
Okay.
Yeah. It's when I was in school, I was a choral music undergrad, so like I had to study how to read French and read German and read Italian. Can I actually tell you what it says? No, but I can pronounce it really well. So, I can.
Well, that will get. That helps at bars.
I will tell you what, I have gone up to many a man and just was like, Je veux que le métal dire le nom que j'ai dit à la nuit, écouvant de l'arbre sans bruit. Comme une lampe et sève pauvre. Are you having a moment right now?
Oh yeah, it's already happened.
You guys, we have to turn off the radio. We have to turn off the recording now because we're just kidding. We're going to go have a different conversation. No, we're not.
In French.
In French. Completely in French, because we both know how to speak it. We both went to school.
Yeah.
Trying to pull it back on track. You also wrote a book, which is like no small detail that we shouldn't overlook, but you wrote Confessions of a Funeral Director. How the Business of Death Saved My Life. Mm-hmm. What is that book actually kind of like contained therein? What should people expect in that?
Basically what we've been talking about, my journey to death positivity, working through a lot of faith issues, working through experiences that I had in the funeral home where I entered it assuming everything is dark and black and bad and negative, and not part of God, and finding the opposite, where oftentimes heaven exists in tears, and because we're taught that God shall wipe away every tear. So there's this idea where God dwells, everybody's happy. But I've seen quite the opposite, where it seems like however you call God, happens around death a lot. And so there's a number of those things, and the end of it though is just the death positivity that I've come to embrace. So that's it. Buy it. It won an award. I won an award for it.
Yes.
Yeah. Nautilus Book Award. I won the gold. Whatever that means. It's going in my obituary.
It's like Caleb Wilde was an award-winning author on death positivity. And then later his book about death and sex came out. Didn't do so hot. Just kidding.
When I'm having trouble orgasming with my wife, I just have her yell, award-winning author, gold medal.
And then Le Petit Dumont. There we are.
Yep. Right away.
Maybe that is your second book, Le Petit Dumont. The endless connections between death and sex.
Yeah. I've thought about writing a book, and I don't think Harper One would like it, which is where the first one, but The Funeral Director and the Porn Star.
Interesting.
I thought about that, where, like I'd find a porn star who's experienced death, and of course me who's experienced porn.
Yes! Oh my God.
But the conversation there and the intersection of the two topics, but I'd have to
you have to really outline that a lot.
I'd have to outline it, and I'd have to be like I'd have to be like J.K. Rowling's to pitch that, and somebody be like, yeah, that's gonna work. So yeah, I don't think I'm there yet.
Not yet, but after this podcast, this mediocre, like third tier independent podcast, you're gonna skyrocket all the way to the top, baby.
They're gonna be throwing that money at me.
That's the hope. Like, honestly.
Yeah, it is, right?
That was my conversation with my friend Caleb Wilde. You can connect with Caleb across the internet at Confessions of a Funeral Director, all one word. And you can also find out more about him and his work at calebwilde.com. Caleb, thanks so much for joining me. I really, really appreciate your time and your heart and your authenticity. This was a really cool time for me, and I hope that other people enjoy it as well. A Tiny Revolution is supported by 145 amazing humans on Patreon. And if you don't know what Patreon is by now, you probably don't listen to podcasts, but let me just give you a refresher. Patreon is an easy way for you to support the creatives in your life that are making the content that matters. So if you liked this episode, if you think conversations like this are important, if you believe that we need more Christian, queer content out there on the internet, then I would encourage you to become a sustaining partner today, because even as low as $1 a month, $5 a month, $10 a month if you have it, makes a huge difference in the amount of... in my ability to pay my bills, and B, also continue to create content at a steady rate, which right now we're growing. So why don't you go over there and join 145 people who said, yes, we do need more queer Christian content. Yes, we do want to have better conversations about faith, sexuality, gender, justice, and the hot mess life we have. So yeah, you can go to patreon.com/thekevingarcia. Check out all the rewards. We've got a newsletter. I've got some meditations that are coming out next week, and you can snatch them up now. And you don't have to wait a month to get your rewards. Actually, as soon as you sign up, you can contribute for that month, and then you'll just be charged on the first of the next month. It's a really, really great system. So thank you so much already for everyone who's supported us so far. And thank you to everyone who's going to join us this week. I love you. I think that's everything I have for now. Go ahead and grab your tickets for Q Christian. Go to qchristian.org. And as per usual, you can connect with me across social media at @TheKevinGarcia, on my website, thekevingarcia.com. And lastly, if you wouldn't mind, leave us a rating in iTunes. You can do that right inside of your podcast app or wherever you're listening to your apps. And ratings get us in front of people. So go ahead, subscribe. If you aren't subscribed already, leave us a little 5-star review. And if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it. That's rude. All right, I think that's everything. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of A Tiny Revolution. My name is Kevin Garcia, and until next time, I'll talk to you soon, baby. Bye!